Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
We just this week we're just following on the release of Ultra Engine 0.9.6, and I thought this was a good time to revisit our whole business strategy and see how well the theories line up with what the actual reaction to the technology has been. This is something that's really interesting to me, and I would really like everyone to understand it because you guys are you are my ears and you are my mouth. Like you tell me like what the developers are thinking, and you also have the ability to become act as kind of a megaphone. If you guys understand what the technology and what it's all about, then you're the Ultra Army, and you can propagate that message out to the rest of the internet, which is not a big truck. So, Ultra Engine, today is July 20th, 24. And before we get into this, I just want to, let me turn on my mouse. Before we start, I want to point out that when I talk about business theory, I'm aware that reality is more complex than any theoretical model. And the purpose of business theory is to try to help make sense out of complicated situations and act as a decision-making tool. It's kind of like statistics, where you can always find little exceptions and things where stats don't really make sense. You can always point out a small problem with them. But if you're looking at a big, complicated set of data and you have to make decisions, that's where statistics becomes very useful, because even though it has, small flaws here and there, it can give you an overall picture of what's going on so that you can make decisions in an educated manner based on something other than what you feel like doing. And of course, business theory needs to be balanced with common sense, which I would define common sense as sort of like things that you intuitively understand but are too complicated to put into words, right? So we'll start with a quote from Sun Tzu. I know this is very cliche to bring Sun Tzu into a business presentation, but strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Oh, Sun Tzu, he is a very wise man. I have another quote from Sun Tzu. It says, Ultra cannot copy Unity's strategy because Ultra is not the same size as Unity and did not start at the same time. But at the same time, Unity cannot copy Ultra's strategy because Unity is not the same size as Ultra and did not start at the same time. I think that was in Art of War, too. Thank you. So this is about strategic uniqueness, and basically the idea is that every firm is entering into unique circumstances and has to have its own strategy to success. You cannot just duplicate someone else's strategy and have it work, because it only works once before the marketplace changes. So what actually is strategic uniqueness? It boils down to differentiated value proposition, core competencies of the company, and innovation. So when we talk about differentiating the value proposition, what we mean is the ability to create a differentiated products, services, or experiences that are distinct from those of your competitor. This can be based on quality, price, design, brand, innovation, customer service, or any other dimension that matters to customers. What dimension are we focusing on that matters to customers? Go ahead.
VR and high performance.
Yeah, rendering performance. That's the dimension that matters to customers. That's been my focus to create a differentiated value proposition, basically. Core competencies. What are the unique strengths and capabilities that set your business apart? What can it do better than anyone else? Is it specialized skills, groundbreaking technologies, efficient processes, or a highly talented workforce? Well, I mean, besides the fact, that I'm a badass programmer, it's focus on the developer experience, because I've spent a lot of time talking with you guys and looking at your projects and optimizing your projects, as well as my experience also in aerospace and defense, which are that's a difficult industry to break into, and it's a smaller there's a smaller set of people who can even operate in that industry. For the American industry, being American certainly helps me. Not having any drug convictions on my record, or any criminal record, that certainly helps me, and that makes the pool of people who are eligible for that smaller. And then innovation. Companies that embrace innovation, continual investment in research and development, exploring new market niches, experiment with novel business models, which we haven't really done, but the rest of that should sound pretty familiar, are more likely to stand out from the crowd. Innovation can be product-based, like Apple iPhone, or service-based, like Airbnbs. In MBA, if you ever get an MBA, they use iPhone all the time as an example. In all presentations, like every business person is secretly upset and jealous that they did not get to present the iPhone. That's like the thing. That's like the biggest thing that aspirational thing they always come back to. Anyways. Okay, so let's switch gears to the diffusion of innovation theory. And this is basically, these are the factors that influence how quickly a technology spreads. And I think the original paper, I think this is a paper from the Harvard Business Journal, I think. And the example it starts with actually is the invention of the telephone. I think the telephone was invented in like the late 1700s or the 1800s. And it actually took about 100 years before the telephone was a widespread technology that everybody had. That seems kind of odd, doesn't it? Because, I mean, that seems like a huge invention everybody would want. But then they analyzed it through the lens of these 5 factors. Trialability is very low for that. Observability is very low for that. Complexity is fairly high for somebody living in the 1800s. Compatibility is 0. Relative advantage, even though relative advantage is huge for a telephone, like that's way better than mailing a letter, but all the other factors were working against it. And so that's basically why it took 100 years for the telephone to become an everyday item that everybody had. Observability is another good one. An example of this would be, that's why Apple uses white for their headphones. That's why they make their headphones white, so that everybody will see other people with those white headphones and wonder, oh, what have they got? That's one of the factors that helped the iPhone and iPod and stuff like that spread fast.
They also have the Apple logo rotated, so when you open it, the Apple logo shows.
What do you mean, rotated?
Like if you open like a Dell, the logo is looking at you when you open it. But if you open like a MacBook, the Apple logo is upside down. So when you open it, yeah.
Very clever.
It wasn't always like that, but I think the clamshell didn't do that. But all my MacBooks do now.
That makes a lot of sense. Another aspect of the diffusion of innovation theory is the technology adoption life cycle. And this basically states that the market as a whole is divided into these different groups. These 5 groups: innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And each of these groups has kind of a different psychographic profile. Psychographic is a good MBA word. I had to pay a lot of money to learn that, but you guys are getting it for free. So the early market, it consists of innovators and early adopters. Let's take a look at the characteristics of each of these segments. Innovators. These are people who want to be the first to try the innovation. They are venturesome and interested in new ideas. These people are very willing to take risks and are often the first to develop new ideas. I got news for you. If you're in this call, this is you. Early adopters. These are people who represent opinion leaders. They enjoy leadership roles and embrace change opportunities. They are always aware of the need to change and so are very comfortable adopting new ideas. An example of this would be our customers in enterprise VR. They're always looking for a relative advantage, and they trust their own opinion to. They trust themselves to form their own opinions based on technology itself, and they are open to new things. Now, the early majority, these people are rarely leaders, but they do adopt new ideas before the average person. That said, they typically need to see evidence that the innovation works before they are willing to adopt it. So they're making a decision. So the early adopters are making a decision based on just looking at the technology and saying, okay, this gives me an advantage. The early majority, they're making a decision based more on, well, how has that played out in the real world? I want to see other people succeed before I jump in. So strategies to appeal to this population include success stories and evidence of the innovation's effectiveness. Like, they want to see it already have been success. They won't join in until it's already a success, until they're convinced of that. Late majority is just people who are the second movers. After them, they're skeptical of change, and they'll only adopt innovation after it has been tried by the majority. And then laggards are people who just never want anything new. Okay, so innovators, that's you guys. That's technology enthusiasts. Early adopters, in our case, I picture this as corporate customers who are probably in a leadership role, and they're looking for new technology to give them a relative advantage. Early majority, this is people who won't move until they see evidence of prior success of the technology. Late majority, this is people who they don't want to move until the majority of the market is moving. And then laggards are people who never want anything new. So if you think about this in terms of like electric cars, electric cars are probably somewhere in here. They haven't hit the majority yet, and it's probably going to be very difficult to get there if they do. Now, Crossing the Chasm is a book everyone should read, and it takes this idea of the technology adoption life cycle and it augments it a bit. It says that adoption is not continuous. Early majority customers are only influenced by other customers who are within their market segment. They do not trust the opinion of innovators and early adopters. So early majority here, they want to see evidence of success, and they don't trust these guys because they're making decisions in a completely different way. And they don't really trust the opinion of the innovators and the early adopters, so they don't really have much influence on them. And because of that, there exists this big gap or chasm in between the early adopters and early majority segments that many technologies are never able to cross. Like right here, a lot of technologies fail to get from this group to that group. And here's a good cartoon that perfectly illustrates the kind of psychology of each of these groups. The innovators, yay, shiny new thing. The early adopters, the guy's got a tie on, so he's some Corporate guy who's looking for an advantage. Cool kids have a new tool I want. And then you have this chasm where a lot of companies and technologies fail to cross this. And I would argue that electric cars still have not crossed this. So let's look at the early majority. This is the mass market here. They're sitting up there and they're like, it looks kind of interesting, but is it for me? Then you have the late majority. What are those weirdos up to? And then the laggards, he wants his fax machine back. This is a perfect illustration of how these segments work. Okay, let's talk about network effects. A viral effect is basically one-to-many. An example of this would be YouTube. I would argue that in the modern internet, these intermediate nodes are less important. I think these used to represent like individual bloggers, but it's much more like one-to-many now in the modern internet because it's more centralized. Network effects are everybody talking among themselves and the group is deciding what they want to do. And this is more like what you see on Reddit. So this early majority, they don't trust these guys. They'll only listen to each other because of, with these network effects. So how in the world do you ever get across this chasm? Well, if you read the first chapter of this book, you will be very depressed because it sets the situation up and explains in a lot of detail all the factors that are against mass adoption of any new technology, even if it's better. There's just so many factors working against you. And it just leaves like that. And like if you just stop reading there, then you'll be very sad because it's a very dismal view. The solution is laid out in the following chapters, I think starting with like either 2 or 3. And that is this strategy which they call like a D-Day strategy. So D-Day, what was this, like June 6th, 1943? 2?
44 is right there on the map.
Oh. Okay, 1944. Can we get the drum beat again? No drum kick? Yeah. Okay. So this was the invasion of Europe through France from England by the Allied forces at the beginning of the American entry into World War II, I guess. I guess America was already involved, but so the Allied forces wanted this entire continent. One option would have been to spread all of their tanks and planes and boats out along the entire coastline evenly all across Europe. And if they did that, then their entire army would have been obliterated in like 6 hours. Then they would have no army. Instead, their approach was to apply over their entire army in one small area. These, like, I guess 4 or 5 beaches. I thought it was 3, but maybe it's more. And just attack in this one area so that they could establish a base here, so that they could provide run supplies here and then spread throughout the rest of the continent. So the English Channel here represents this chasm in between the early adopters and early majority market. And their approach was to apply overwhelming force. They couldn't beat the enemy everywhere because defenders always have like a 3-to-1 advantage, I think. But they could beat them in one specific area. So if this entire coastline represents game development, you've got PS3 over here, Xbox, PC, mobile, Wii or Switch, I guess it is now, free to play games, MMOs, and then right here we have VR. I cannot attack all of those points at once. If I do, like, my forces will be spread so thin that my entire army will get wiped out in one day. But if I focus all of my effort in one specific area, which is VR, that is where I can overwhelm the enemy. And so their prescription here is to attack specific niches within the early majority market where you can gain enough traction, you can gain enough of a percentage of that small market that these network effects will start taking place. And then these guys, the early majority, who only listen to other people who are in the early majority, they'll start listening to each other in that one small segment. And then so you can establish a beachhead here, a base, and then you can spread to other small segments across the whole market. And that's actually, like, I figured all of this out, like, quite some time ago. And that's been my whole strategy. That's why I focus so heavily on VR. So what is Ultra's focus? PC games in very general. I wanted to make these concentric circles, but I didn't know how to do it in PowerPoint. PC games in general. That's like the broadest scope that we have. And then VR in general. And then VR for aerospace and defense is sort of like the innermost focus. And I think this is a good scope for us. Why VR? Well, there's a significant customer pain point. So that means that relative advantage, that's one of the factors in the diffusion of technology, is going to be much higher. The pain point is VR motion sickness, or the development time that it takes to make a VR application work, because it's really hard to keep the frame rate high enough. There are difficult technical challenges. Unlike something like mobile phones or 2D games, there's not really any technical challenges there, and I'm good at solving technical problems. So if I don't put those skills to use, then I don't really have much of an advantage. There's a large enterprise market for VR, so there's a completely different way to make money. That's actually like when NASA first approached me and asked me about using Leadworks in VR projects. I mean, that's when I realized, this is a whole nother business that I haven't been looking at. So in general, that's used for simulation, visualization, training in aerospace and defense. Also in manufacturing is another one. Architecture, visualization. I feel that making VR sort of the centermost focus, it doesn't stray very far from our historical focus, which is PC games in general. And Leadworks was always about advanced features, making advanced features accessible, so you can make something that looks good, and yet the development workflow is pretty streamlined and relatively easy without being too crippled. So VR is really just a subset of PC gaming, and everything that benefits VR, all the performance, that comes back and benefits PC gaming in general. If I said something like, okay, our focus is going to be on mobile, our focus is going to be on free-to-play games, our focus is going to be on MMOs, then that would alienate a lot of people. With VR, it's like, it pretty much fits into what we're doing already, so everybody's pretty okay with it, I think. VR developers, by definition, are adopters of new technology. They are open to new ideas because the current generation of VR technology. Although VR is an old technology, the current generation is relatively new. And then finally, like aerospace and defense, just that has a cool factor. Okay, so if we focus on VR, how does this actually like pan out in the real world? What does that require? One is rendering performance. That's already done. Why is this so important? It eliminates VR sickness. It eliminates the need to optimize anything because it's already the only optimization step is the choice to use Ultra. After that, it's already optimized. And that's not that kind of sounds like marketing bullshit, but that's actually true. And finally, it allows bigger, more robust VR applications because other engines are going to hit the wall on performance, and Ultra just keeps going and going. Support for the standalone support for the Meta headset, that's going to be important. That is a priority. I don't know when it's going to happen, but that is definitely something up there. OpenXR support, I feel, is important. That will support the Meta headset, and it'll also support the Vario, which is like this high-end $6,000 headset for business. I've never tried it, but I've heard it's good. And then I think CAD model support is an important thing to support in the future, and I've already done some work there. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. It doesn't require us to go too crazy. I mean, we don't have to get like extremely off track. Now, if I said we're not going to support 3D games, we're only going to support VR games, you have to have a VR headset to use Ultra, that would be an example of taking things too far. And like I said, like business theory needs to be balanced with common sense. But yeah, all of this together, this is why I feel like VR is a really good thing to make like the center most focus of development, and then VR in general, and then PC gaming in general. I think it really fits into what we've already been doing, and it has all of these advantages. So that's why I did it. Now, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, I would recommend these books to you. Crossing the Chasm. If you only read one, read that one. The Innovator's Dilemma is also a very, very popular book. This is like the number one book that gets recommended if you get an MBA. A lot of your teachers will tell you to read this, and it's a good one. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. It's not really a book. It's pretty short, and it's like a bunch of scattered notes, but there's some really good information in there. And then Diffusion of Innovations. I think this was an article from the Harvard Journal, and then it got turned into a full book or something like that. I haven't read the book, but just read the article. Yeah, but Crossing the Chasm is probably the best of those that you can read, and it's not too long of a book. Okay, so this week it became very apparent to me. This is my own info here. It became very apparent to me that I've really got three factors that I need to manage, and they are related, but you don't really see. I mean, they're kind of mostly independent. They're only related on a very long time scale. Like over the course of a year, they will affect each other, but I don't really see a lot of correlation like day to day with these three factors. Number one is maintaining user satisfaction, and that just means helping you with your projects and fixing bugs and giving you new features. Number two is new sales, which are occurring mostly through Steam, and that's again like those two things do interrelate, because if the user satisfaction is good, and that means the reviews are going to be better, that's going to influence new sales. But I don't really see, like on a day-to-day, I don't see a big correlation there. And then finally, public perception of the product and the company. So I guess PR. So this management of public perception of the product and company, this is something I failed to do with Leadworks. And to a large extent, that's because I didn't really have a story for Leadworks. It was just a software product with a collection of features that some people liked, and it was pretty easy to use. There wasn't like an ongoing story that you could tell the audience. And it's like I don't have the ability to brainwash the public. Like if I say something that's total bullshit, it won't stick. But at the same time, if I don't put that information out there and at least like propose, hey, this is a story. Do you agree with this? If I don't do that, then it just won't ever exist. And we got a really good look at this week because the news for 096 was pretty big. Kronos featured us right there on the front of their website. Thank you, Kronos. I've actually got a meeting with them Monday. Somebody from Vulkan Developer Relations. They want my opinion about things, and I would tell them. I think I will tell them if it gets that far. I think I will tell them that they should come out with a new API that focuses on takes the best of OpenGL and Vulkan and focuses on like a streamlined process with support for ray tracing. By the way, if your company or startup needs business strategy advice, I am available for consulting. Visit www.ultraengine.com/services to learn more. Act now, and you'll receive this free gift. Where's my drum roll? We can't do this all night, folks. We're just gonna leave the phone. We're gonna leave the phone lines open for 15 more minutes.
Are you not saying to the OpenGL guys or to the Kronos guys, just make OpenGL 5?
Yeah, that's pretty much.
And something I want to say about Letworks and the story. I think Letworks has a story, to be honest, and it's the story for the start of Ultra. So, yeah.
What do you mean?
You said you had no story for Letworks, or Letworks has no story, the engine itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a story, and it's the story of Ultra Engine and the evolution of your experience as developer and publisher.
Well, yeah. What I mean is if I went back to 2016, and if I had invested more money in putting information out there, I would not have known what I wanted people to say about Leadworks at the time. But yeah, you're right. It does have a story, and that's how we got here. Okay. So Kronos, thank you for the mention. Reddit has actually also been a really good channel. And let's take a look. There's two subreddits I want to take a look at. One is r/gamedev, and the other is r/virtual reality. Now, with all of this theory in mind, especially this, let's go in and see what the people say. We'll start with game dev. This guy's actually saying, why focusing on VR? Who is pining for VR? Meta, Apple, Vision Pro, drop the waste. Focus on making the game engine in and of itself as performant as possible. Oh, we've already done that. Otherwise, you're wasting time making something for other developers. VR should not be the focus. And, he probably means well. What he's really saying is spread your army across this entire coastline evenly and attack everywhere all at once. Don't concentrate all your forces in one area and then spread out. Instead, you should attack everywhere. And, well, that's probably, if we believe this to be true, it's probably not a good idea. this is just arguing about the specifics of the benchmarks. This guy actually, it scared me for a minute because he's talking about the graphics render mesh instanced, and he was able to increase the frame rate. Okay, so this is something I remember now from when I created these benchmarks. Unity has a feature to create a batch, a static batch of instances, but if like the whole batch is either drawn or not drawn, which is really a strange design decision. So basically, he's saying if I disable all of the functionality that this benchmark is meant to test, then the Unity version runs faster. Not faster than Ultra, but faster than it was. Well, I mean, the whole point of the test, of the instance geometry test, is to see how well each engine handles the overhead of having a lot of different objects and culling them and sorting them into batches. So that was my answer to him, and that is correct. So we do have an answer to everything that that people ask. Genebris is he's just straight out like throwing out information, the correct information. Thank you very much for your help. He is part of the Ultra Army, or at least helping us. That was very helpful. So whenever these objections are raised, it seems like we always always have an answer to everything because we've spent so much time talking about. So the response there was basically, well, I think you're lying. Okay, I guess you're right, but fuck you anyways. That's the response from r/game dev. Let's take a look at the response from r/virtual reality. We definitely need a better engine for VR than Unity. Wish you all the best for you and good luck. Question about does this work on the standalone? Not yet, but it's important. Really cool stuff. VR needs a new game engine built with it in mind. More questions. Are you going to support Android-based headsets like the Quest and the Pro? That's important. This was kind of funny. How can we be assured that your work is capable if your only pedigree is that you worked at puny NASA? I didn't get the joke until like the very end. He's making a joke, and a lot of people downvoted him. So that was very clever. More questions like, oh, I want to learn more. I am no dev and just want to wish you the best. With my limited knowledge, I feel kind of worried that more and more studios switch to Unreal and competition gets less, which might lead to slower advancements in the future. So it's great to see at least upcoming competition to the big two, even if it's just for VR. More questions. This does look interesting. Can you elaborate more on your VR projects or how this engine solved it? It sounds very interesting. That led to a long conversation. This is very interesting. So contrast the reaction of the people in the VR subreddit with the contrast with the people in the game dev subreddit, and ask yourself, where do these people fall in this chart? It sounds like the people in the VR subreddit are mostly consist of these two groups. Either they just like new stuff, or they work for some company and they see possibly, hey, this might be an advantage for us. I'm interested. How many times did we see the word interesting in that conversation? Then you go to the early majority and they're like, well, I'm not going to use it until everybody else is using it, basically. That's the psychology of both of those groups. And now to see it play out, this is all theory that I came up with based on just, reading these books and looking at the examples that they pointed out and saying, okay, that kind of makes sense. I'm going to base my decisions on that. And now, for the first time, we're actually seeing how that plays out. And it looks like the theory is correct. I mean, this is solid evidence of all of this, all of this business theory is basically right. So, before we move on, any questions about all of that?
One question I would have is like, is it like sometimes the problem is you having the problem, right? So you can like look and see like what other people problems are having, and then you go, oh well, I'm gonna focus on their problem. But was there like anything? Is it a good like advice of see like, oh, I was trying to do this, and I went online and I couldn't find the answer to my solution, so I made my solution and then used that as a business strategy.
Yeah, I think that's completely valid. I mean, that's pretty much like what I did. Like
Right.
when I was doing stuff at NASA, like I saw the CAD models they were trying to put in VR, and I was like, oh crap, this will not work. We need something new.
Right. Because I came across a lot of those like problems when I was making my game, and I was like, well, why is this? Why can I not just? Why is there not like a place where I can just get this and everything? And because of the duopoly in the gaming industry right now, like it's either one or the other. And I don't think there's like I think a lot of people who are trying to remain independent and control their own business and finances, I think they're getting left in the dust.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think that would be categorized under like relative advantage.
Right. Right. And I just don't like the duopoly that's like happening right now because it's either one or the other.
It's
And
breaking.
then, yeah, it's, I don't,
Interest
I don't
rates
think,
went up, free money ran out, and now the free market is returning, which I think is a very exciting time.
yep. Yeah. I have a lot of questions about like VR, future VR in the engine, but that's not relating to like business strategy. So,
Okay. Do we have any questions in the chat? Can't see it right now.
What was the response on the other Reddits?
Smaller. I've got the slideshow will have links to those. Um, yeah, I mean those were the two that were really that were the most active, and the others just had like a few responses. And I think the audience there wasn't it wasn't as well targeted as those two groups. But I'll have you. I'll have the. I've got links to them in the slideshow, and that'll go up. That'll be pasted on our website along with this video.
Okay.
Any chat messages?
don't see any.
What's every headset running Meta's Horizon OS? What is Horizon OS? I've never even heard of that. Is that just their version of Android?
He says 1 second. But yeah, that's another thing. Really quick, this is probably one of my other questions. Is Are you going to port to Linux before you port to Android since you're pretty much have to target that kernel anyway, and it's just one step to mobile? Because when you go to mobile, you have to do a different operating system and different architecture.
Yeah.
But if you just do Linux, you go, okay, I did the Linux, now I got to do the architecture.
Yeah, without making any like commitment to the order that things will be released in, I just assumed that it would be in that order because there's a couple of like weird things with the file system and stuff with Linux, so it makes a lot of sense to port that, get that, at least get it running on Linux first, and then jump from Linux to Android. That makes a smoother transition.
Right.
So Horizon OS is what's running on the Quest, and it's what's Meta's making available to any VR headset developer, and they're basically going to be the VR platform, and everyone else will have a headset with their OS installed.
Oh, so they're opening it up to other hardware
Yeah,
manufacturers. That's
So
interesting.
they,
including the store, and they're way opening up a lot of stuff.
so
That's kind of
they want to be the Windows of VR, of standalone VR, pretty much.
Yes, yes, exactly.
that's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean I don't like Meta, but that's a good idea.
Well, I mean, that's like the software is a huge issue. Like, why would you grab the latest and greatest headset if you know there's probably going to be all sorts of compatibility issues?
Well, and also like
It gets tough. Yeah.
there's different solutions for all the problems in VR. Some people want the best screen possible, but want to control how other input is done. There's like this camera thing you like wear on your like chest and it'll track your hands for you. It's not very it doesn't last very long and gets really hot from what I read. But that's like a nice like controller like solution, I guess. And then some people might prefer like comfort, some people might prefer price, materials used. So if there's a lot of different headsets to accommodate the needs of like the customer, I think. But everything's under one platform. Like everyone knows they can play Beat Saber or whatever, or use their
Yeah.
productivity app. Um, I think instead of like dedicated solely for the Quest, I think we should be shooting for Horizon OS. But I think the Quest should be like the I guess the control.
The Quest 3, it has to run good on.
Yeah, so like you
That's
target the Quest 3 as a control, and then like it's like testing a Windows application on a Surface laptop. It's like on a base Windows install. Better example. Like you just don't like you install Windows and then you just install your application and any drivers you need. This way you know like if something goes up, it's probably something external, not something like with your application. Because there's a lot of I ran into a lot of issues with like resource monitoring programs with LedWorks. Like it didn't allow my game to go full screen. So again, what I'm saying is that the Quest should be a control. Still, even if the OS is going to many other different headsets.
Yeah, that's actually like an uncharacteristically focused idea coming from a major corporation. Any other questions?
I have more about VR in general, but not about business strategy. So, continue.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now we'll just shift over to talking about last week's progress. Since the release of 096, 9 bugs are fixed. I thought the Steam AFK away from keyboard freezing problem was fixed, but now Drake Black says no, he can still produce it, so I'm going to report that to Valve now. We're on the latest version of Steamworks, so it's up to them now. The Steam overlay problem, where it was not disabled, even though I disabled it in the setting, that just in the settings in Steamworks, that just automatically got fixed when I updated to the latest version of that library. The project manager sync bug is fixed. That was one that was hanging around for a couple of weeks, and I just didn't have enough information to continue to investigate it, but then I found out what I needed to, and then it was pretty easy to fix. The plan for 097, development has already begun. That's going to include decals. I want to get the zip packaging publish system in there, and I thought of a good way to do it to handle the encryption while allowing the Lua executables to still retrieve that password, which they need to be able to do. I have 2 third-party DLCs coming. This will also introduce detail maps in the materials system, probably animation settings in the materials, more control over the shadow map sizes. I'm going to change this from currently I'm using an array texture for the shadow maps. And I'm going to switch it back to the bindless textures approach so you get more control over the individual size of each shadow map. Improved compatibility with some GPUs, very like mobile 600 series AMD GPUs will probably have some improved compatibility there. And if I have time, I'll get the particles system in there as well. That gets us very close to the final 1.0 release. Not final, but finished. That's going to move all the culling from a CPU thread onto the GPU with a compute shader, since that approach has worked out so well with the foliage system. It will include an example game and then various small enhancements. There's a lot of them, but just small things that I'm not going to list today.
Are you also implementing with the GPU calling the function to set the render range for entities like in networks?
Yeah, I think we can put that. Yeah, I think that'll be part of that whole process.
And with the animation stuff, you're going to allow for to change an entity's emission color, correct? So I can make something like turn like I can give it a white mask, and then I can make it any color I want in gameplay.
Yeah, that's going to be. So I would characterize all of those. I'll group all of those things together as extra properties for entities and materials. Yeah.
All right, great, awesome. Is it okay to ask my VR questions now?
Yeah, actually, yeah, go for it.
All right, so
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the end of my presentation, so we can just have open Q&A discussion, talk about your projects, whatever you want.
All right, so in VR, I know VR has just been implemented and that's it. But is there any plans to support seated play, so someone can play they're standing, but not seated first gen VR? That was garbage. I mean seated I can play my standing games while sitting down, so I get less tired. Because of the height, right? Of the height, you know what I mean? It would just adjust the height of the camera.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's a set. There's a command for it. I guess it's not exposed. I guess we just have the standing only. Yeah, I can add that.
Yeah, and then is there I think we need an example project, or at least a DLC or something, to go over teleportation and how to handle players putting their head through a wall and skipping large parts of the map. I think the best way to do that is to use the nav mesh system for the teleportation grid. So so you can't go where an AI can't go. So that's the idea of using a nav mesh for teleportation. So
good thinking.
Yeah, so because I'm getting my ducks in a row for a VR project right now, and these are things I wonder about. All right, how's the player gonna move through the world? You know, I need a setting for sitting down. I need a setting for I want locomotion support. So some people really like locomotion, and then someone who's more sensitive might just want the stretch banding or teleportation, where you just point where you want to go, and then the camera just translates to that location, rubber bands to that location.
If you do it really fast, it actually it's fast enough that it doesn't cause nausea. It's only when you move slowly.
Right. So, I'm just and this some things a little bit over my head, and I don't want to make it too complicated. I just want something. I just need an idea, an example or something to how to do it. Even if it's a first gen VR type, even if we just copy things you see in the lab or something, or just stock Steam VR. I think a little bit more advanced because in the lab you can stick your head through things and teleport between walls. But
Yeah, well, I mean, if we say that we want Ultra to be really great for VR and really great for these people who seem like they're pretty open to something new, they seem pretty excited.
mhm.
I absolutely agree that prioritizing some of those features that you're talking about and having it ready to, having it working and ready to go, I think that should be a priority.
Yeah, I have some models. I think you have them right. They were part of the X Form project for a little bit because I just dragged and dropped everything I had. They include like the teleportation like ring. It includes anchor points like like in Steam VR. If you go to Steam VR and it goes like to the Mars thing, there's like all these target things they can the teleporter will automatically like snap to.
Hmm.
I got that model. Um, I got like the little like glow halo thing. If you don't have it, I'll send it. I'll wrap it up for you so you can just take a look.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I would appreciate that. Uppercase AI asks support for additional trackers, and yeah, actually, we have that in the API. So I think I'll probably do the switch to OpenXR first, and then add the additional trackers support because that way I don't have to rewrite the same thing twice. But yeah, I think everything like that I think is really great. And
Um,
this doesn't mean that you have to. I'm not trying to pressure anybody to do a VR game if you just want to make a regular 3D game. I'm just saying like we are going to commit a lot of resources to making the VR experience very good. Probably more than I would commit to I'm not going to try to specialize in MMO games. I'm not going to try to specialize in iPhone games or Candy Connect 3 whatever. Like VR is going to be the focus, but if you're making just a regular 3D game, I think that's absolutely fine and the performance gains will benefit you massively. It's just we do have to have like sort of our specialty, the thing that we're best at.
right. Another feature, hands with knuckle support for finger tracking.
Just have like some built-in hands that are ready to go.
Yeah. What we can do is you can contact Marcel, um, have him chop off the wrist of the hands he was working on for X form, and then it doesn't matter like what it looks like. It could be like just a blue texture
Yeah.
or whatever, and this way it shows um how to rig something, how to rig the hands, and then maybe just an API call, just like set hand model or whatever to each controller, and the hands will just and if the hands are well, you want three forms. You want the controllers only, you want the hands with the controller, and you want
Mm.
the hands separated.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah, I think having all that set up and ready to go would be fantastic. And it sounds like, I mean, from what we have very strong evidence now that um, it's actually going to be like very much appreciated by the audience.
yeah.
$30
Al-
for a VR tracker, that's great.
Yeah. Also for the meta, it doesn't use the. We also need hands for the meta because it uses the hand tracking with the controller, so that's gonna be another challenge too. So just heads up. I don't know how that any of this works. I'm just letting you know what I played with and looked at and everything. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, if we could just make it, like make hand tracking and everything really just really easy. That'd be great. That'd be
Yeah, it'll
super.
just save people some time there.
We want to again. We want this to be the ultimate VR engine. So
Yeah. All that interface stuff is pretty interesting because it's also like experimental still and cutting edge.
right. Also, maybe you should manually built in a box around the camera. This way to control fading because fading is used in a lot of not only for like teleporting, but it could be used for, if the player puts their head through a wall. Um,
Wouldn't you use? I would picture that being done with if you use CSG blocks
uh-huh.
and you just turn them into like a few. There is commands to tell if an object is inside one of these brushes.
It's like get bounding box, but we need the pointer for the camera, don't we? I don't think that's accessible. There's a lot of things that aren't accessible.
Yeah, we can add that. That's yeah, that'll be easy. But
Right, but we would have to cycle through all the CSG box, or
no,
we can
you
do
know you get entities in area.
right. And if it's we just check if the point of the camera is in CSG, it just turns black. Or
Yeah,
if
or
it's
like you can probably get the distance too, so you could use that to make like a fading factor, so it starts to fade out, so it's not like totally abrupt when you get too
right,
close to a wall.
all
That could
right,
all just be built into the VR into a single like script for the VR controller. That would work.
all right. Yeah. Again, if we just have something like even if it's in Lua or C++, even both, that would be great.
Probably want both. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I was not really directly about VR, but I was looking into combining a C++ app with Lua because I want to code my application in C++, but have the components in Lua. And although it could get messy, I think it has a lot of advantages doing so.
Soul is your
Um,
friend.
yeah, so it's gonna be my friend. But one question I have is this collect garbage command. In LedWorks, that was only done to to debug, and it's standard in the main Lua. Is there a way that I don't want my main loop to be Lua, but is there a way to call? Do I need collect garbage, or is that just there?
You can okay. So in Lua, traditionally, with
Uh,
Lua games, you have the choice to either have a lower frame rate overall because you're calling collect garbage every frame,
mhm.
or you can have you can have pauses in your game every minute or so because you wait and then you only or the garbage collector will call by itself automatically after a certain period of time once the memory gets big enough. And you have
Uh-huh.
traditionally you've had those choices, but because Ultra puts all of the game logic on a completely separate thread running at 60 hertz,
Uh-huh.
you're probably better off just going ahead and calling collect garbage every single frame because it's not going to slow down the frame rate at all because the frame rate is the rendering is all on a separate thread. So you can do that without worry, and then that will prevent you from ever getting those big lag spikes where those
Yeah,
big
that's
pauses.
very. Yeah, I don't want that, especially in VR. So
Well,
you're
it won't.
saying
Again, in VR, it won't slow down.
you
It
cut off.
won't mess up your frame rate no matter what. But it would interrupt the motion. It would interrupt objects that are in motion. They would just sort of like keep extrapolating again along the same velocity they were going at, and then correct. So for Lua, I would recommend just calling collect garbage every single frame.
All right, and obviously there's a way to call that command in C++, but I don't want to mess up the Lua stack. So I'm probably just going to make a program class, expose that to Soul, and then just have a main Lua, and it will just call the programming class and handle the main loop, I guess. So,
As long as it's all running in the same thread, you're fine.
well, yeah, it's gonna be in the program class is just gonna be on the main game thread.
Okay.
So I don't
Okay.
I don't do multi-threading. I
Please
don't
don't
like that.
please don't run Lua on a separate thread unless it's a
No,
completely different Lua virtual machine.
and the project is just it just calls the main script. That's it.
Yeah,
It-
yeah.
yeah, because
There's a let's see.
there's no source code available for the Lua app like there was
Yes,
for
there
WebWorks.
is.
There is.
Let's see.
I think it's on
Scripting.
this. All right, so
C++ interpreter for Lua. Below is complete C++ code for a program controlled primarily with Lua. The program first executes some required script in the system directory, then all scripts in the start directory, and then runs the main.lua script file and
and this is
exits.
just And this is the exact code that the C++ timer.
Yes, I believe. Yes, it is.
Okay. That's what I didn't understand. I looked at this and this is very interesting.
Yeah, this actually
Very
goes into a lot of detail about using Sol and
right.
such things.
I think the Steam API code is actually very useful too. For looking for like how to like say, oh, I want this like in the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
like how to make like how to like section off things like
So he's talking about, I believe he's talking about the the way that Steamworks is exposed to Lua in that source code, which is available to you in your projects.
yeah.
Yeah, Sol is fantastic.
So
Really great piece of technology.
um is there is there go- is there a better way to use Lua C compiled Lua files? Is there like a workflow set up for that? I mean, there is the compiler, but is there something like we can do like in Visual Code that pre-compiles the Lua file into a Lua C file, and
Um,
then
I believe the Lua the trash can useful. Let's not have a repeat of last week, please. That wasn't anybody's fault what happened last week, but let's just try to avoid it. Make sure it doesn't happen. The Lua, you can compile. I believe the engine will load Lua binaries and run them just as if they were scripts. I'd probably recommend just packing those into an encrypted zip file, and we'll have official support for that very
well,
soon.
it's not that I don't want people to steal my code. It's I don't want to write something that's never called besides in one scenario, and then once it is called, there's a syntax error, and I pull my hair out trying to figure out why it crashes sometimes.
Oh, so it's
That
basically a way to pre-test the syntax of it and just make sure it compiles into a.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's because I don't mind Lua as a language. That's like the only thing that like prevents me from like using it, and I think I want to use Lua this way. There's less complexity in my C++ app.
Yeah.
So, so I'm
Yeah,
just
you could do that, and you could set something up in the editor so that it automatically like compiles those if you wanted to. I haven't really worked it into our workflow, but I think it'll work perfectly fine.
and the engine will read. So if I write like a component, if I write a component and I compile it as a Lua C, it will load the Lua C file, not or it will always.
I'm pretty sure.
So it will prioritize the Lua C file, or
No, it'll just you have to. I think you have to explicitly say that that's the script that you want to execute.
but with the components, how? Oh, and I guess there'll be something in the system where you something in the component, like yeah, component system. Here we go. I just want to see. Um, there's nothing about loading a component though.
When we talk about components, is there a way to make the components creation more easy?
Yeah,
You have to
let's take a break here for a minute, and then we'll continue.
Um, I want to look at stuff.
So I'll be back in like a couple of minutes.
Can't find anything that
I have to drink a lot of water to keep that radio announcer voice going. I don't want these videos to sound boring and like because we're talking about technical stuff. I try to sound like
Right. But
make
before
it
Andy's question, I
make
don't
it
see anything
exciting.
that it prefers a Lua over a Lua C file.
I've never
In
tried. I don't think I've ever tried it.
right, because I think it should prioritize a Lua C file, and if it can't find it, which is 99% of the time, it will do the Lua file.
That makes sense to me. I think that's it. Yeah, I
Right.
think I
So,
can probably add that in pretty easily.
all right, let me know when you can and do, because I want to look into making a Lua workflow that's more home to me, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, uppercase AI. So, Andy, do you want to expand on your question?
Yeah, sure. And at the moment, you need to. I think it's not complicated. It's maybe a bit. Yeah, you need to make 5 things in order to create a component. So first of all, you need to add the component with the editor. It's pretty fine. It's working really well. I like it. And then you need to open your Visual Studio file and add these files to your project.
Yeah.
And then, in order to this, you also need to um, include it into the components file. So you have 4 steps you need to do in order to create a component. And I think if you could reduce this to 2 or even 1, it would be more accessible and more easy to use for new beginners, for example, for new users from the engine.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. So, do you have any ideas how that can be accomplished?
I have no idea how to implement the file into Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Maybe there is something you can call or something like this. I'm not sure. I have not that much clue about it. But would it be possible that you do at least the implementation, for example, for the components header that you can edit the programmably? So if someone is create a component, you just create a new file and make a comment or something into the components header, where you can have a
Yeah. So,
bookmark or
okay, let's.
something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the component, all the components are stored in this one header. So they have to be included, and then in the register components function, each of those classes has to be registered. This part could be automated without
I
too
did
much trouble.
automate that. I did
Okay.
automate that. My preprocessor code, where you can find in GitHub, I will pull it up. It doesn't write the JSON files for you, but it will. Just give me a second. It will.
Oh,
Sign in.
that's interesting. That's a bug. You can't. Okay, so I need to fix it so that it removes spaces from a component name because you can't have a space in a class name.
Alright, hold on. I gotta verify my stupid GitHub. Give me a second. I hate this so much. I hate all these stupid things.
And then if you open up the VCX proj file, you can see this is really just this is just an XML file. Let's see. And here's where there's an entry where the component CPP files are added. So if you could, this part could be automated.
Wait, where are you? Where are you? So I'm posting my preprocessor. What you do is you set that you attach that to your your post build setting, and then what it will do is that it will make a new register component or component system.h file, and it will just add it to the file. The only thing you have to write is the JSON file. And I made a solution to that, but I would have to implement it for Ultra Engine because I did it for Leadworks. So, but in Leadworks it was really easy because it was just a Lua file.
Yeah. So if we
Yeah.
wanted to, and if we wanted to automate the addition of that CPP file to Visual Studio, there's two places in the VCX proj. There's an entry for it, and then also in the filter VCX proj.filters file, there's an entry for it. So I'm interested in this idea, but it's also like it has to be done very carefully because in order to make it so it doesn't mess these things up.
Yeah, I've messed these things up all the time, and it's very complicated. Like if one thing's wrong, all your filters break.
Yeah, I wish there was. I wish this was. I wish there was a simpler way to do this in Visual Studio. I've even considered making like getting rid of the project like this and using a build file, like a make build file for Visual Studio. That would actually be quite a lot easier.
I use my
Maybe
pre-made.
that's this, not pre-make, but like a build
Aw.
file. You can set a Visual Studio project up to use like a Linux build file. That might be
Mhm.
a way to. That might actually be a more reliable way to do this.
Yeah, and I think it'll be more easier to update projects as the engine goes on. Because I think the another thorn in like developing is like when you update the engine and everyone wakes up and notices that the project no longer compiles or anything. So
Well, that should be a very very rare occurrence, but yeah, the build file approach, that might be something. I think that's probably what we should look into next and see if that's an option.
Mhm. And what about like a preprocessor to add the registry components like I did, like I made?
It would be better if it was in a Lua script and it was just an extension that runs in the editor, I think. I guess, we could also just make it part of the build process
Oh,
too. You're right.
yeah, yeah, because the
That might be
user,
better.
yeah, because the user is gonna be like, they just want to add the class and they don't want to like think about exposing it to the
Yeah.
engine.
And then it would work if even if you were working in a different
Yeah,
project or if the editor was turned off, it would still
yeah.
work.
And again, like if we could add automatic JSON writing, so like I showed you what I was working on a few months ago, where you make custom type defs and then use that to help expose members of the component and what are outputs and what are inputs and all that. But
Actually, I did find something related to this. There's I was looking into Python binding libraries to expose C++ classes to Python. One of the popular ones uses LLVM
see,
to analyze the C++ code, and then it generates the Python bindings from that. And so it's basically what that is it's basically like reflection for C++ code. So that something like that might be an option. It seems like almost overkill to include like an entire compiler just to do this one task, just to get just to strip class members and functions out of a header file. If there's, I've also looked for, but was unable to find any kind of C++ parser. I can't find anything like that. Like
I
something that
had
just parses the header files.
I had to write my own. It was really annoying.
Yeah, and I wrote one too, but it's just like it wasn't 100%. There were some situations where it would fail, and if there is something out there that will just parse a C++ header file and work
I, I
reliably, that would be wonderful.
I guess the reality is that it wasn't like safe. Like if we were like an in-house company, we can make rules like, hey, make sure you like do this way, or else the thing won't work. But you can't do that when you know what I mean, when you sell them to other developers because they want to make their own rules. I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. So let's look into that too, and maybe we'll find something.
Yeah, because
But yeah,
What I had,
that would be nice if it worked.
yeah,
If that all worked.
yeah, because what I had set up in Lightworks, because I was just playing around with it, it was like amazing, and I wish I had it in Cyclone when I was working on it. But that was just like a test, because writing a Lua file was easier than writing a JSON file. So, and because of like how it interacted with the editor, you just write the same comment you would in Leadworks, and then it would just like copy it over to the Lua version, and it would just auto expose it exactly how you want. It was great.
Okay. Yeah, that would be pretty nice to have.
Yeah, because writing JSON files is like writing FTG files. It's like not fun.
Yeah, it's nice to have that like as the intermediate data, like where all the data is stored for every language. But if we had some solution that would propagate that automatically as you were editing, that would be pretty nice. I kind of assumed something like that would come about. I just wasn't sure on the details.
Right.
So yeah, I think especially for new member, this would really help. Because
Okay.
at some points you create a component and then you forget to add it into the header file, and then you think, okay, what's wrong here? Why my component isn't working? And yeah.
Yeah.
Also, adding a name, like making sure your names are right. That bit me a few times too.
Names?
Yeah, because I manually make mine. I don't use the editor because I usually like just have Visual Studio open, and it's the like if I was doing it the streamline way, I probably wouldn't have these issues. But I have to make sure the copy command's there. I have to make sure then the name is set in the constructor.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, this eliminates some of the complexity, and
Yeah,
if
but
we can eliminate the rest, that would be very nice.
yeah, I just don't like that it like I understand that it gives you like default values to like as an example, but I kind of don't like that because that's just things I have to delete if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Well,
Um,
if we can automate that more, then that would eliminate that issue for you, I think.
all right.
So
Um,
thanks for the suggestion, Andy. That's a good one that we should definitely consider.
I have another suggestion based on like at the tug of war between like you want example assets in projects, but for some people they want like a clean slate, and we talked about like omitting files.
Mm-hmm.
What if you just make the like starter files just a DLC, and then if people need them, they just pull it from their DLC or their assets folder, like development textures and test models and all that.
Yeah. Well, right now we have the projects that you create. It has like very minimal media going along with it, and I think in the future, what it's gonna branch into is sort of you'll have both like more well developed templates to choose from, and then the default will be very very constricted, just like the bare minimum. So like basically you'll have the choice. Like when you go up here, let's see,
Yeah.
project manager. No, I don't want to save this. Create. You can right now you just select between the language and the Lua, and then we'll probably have like another step or another selector here that will choose the exact template, and then you
Well,
can go blank or first person project, VR project, etc.
you need a language. You need a language option, and then you need like a template option because right now
Yeah.
there's just a Lua or C++, and I really like that you made that very like I can make a template like today, and I can make it like my Lua/C++ template, and I'll have both the Lua and C++ stuff I need, and this way when I go to update it, it will not override my executable with the Lua stock Lua one, or it won't. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, and I can have more control over that. So, I
And
really like the template system right now.
This is also one issue that what I was talking about, like automatic inclusion of CPP files in Visual Studio projects. If we were actually able to switch these over to these VS projects over to using a build file, then we could more easily like automatically generate that initial build file for the project, because like some projects are going to have different code files than other projects unless we just include the code files in the default blank project by always. So that's another thing that would, if we can solve that, then that would make this process quite a bit easier, make it
right?
easier to
And
support like custom templates and stuff.
yeah, and also you have to like down the road you got to like think about like C# support and all that. So
Oh yeah, 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 let's definitely look into that this week and see what we can figure out.
If we talk about C sharp, um, do you think it's better to make C sharp first, or maybe some type of visual scripting?
C# for sure.
yeah,
And that actually, if we want to get technical, I was thinking about that, but I just, there was so much to talk about, I didn't mention it. If you want to nerd out on this, that would fall under compatibility. How consistent the innovation is with the values, experiences, and needs of the potential adopters. Having C# support, that would definitely increase the compatibility of Ultra for a lot of the people that are coming from Unity. Trialability, this is something I'm failing right now because there is no time limited trial right now, so that will change soon, so that trialability will increase. I just haven't done it yet because I was so focused on getting the new features out and stuff that it made sense not to.
Also, something like a demo or something from the engine would maybe help to find new people so they can actually test the engine.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, right now we're just saying like, well, buy it and you'll probably like it. You've got 2 hours on Steam. You can use it for 2 hours. We have a time limited 2 hour demo basically that you have to pay for, and then you get your money back if you don't keep it. Will Python, Trashcan Useful asks, will Python be integrated? Well, a lot of people have asked me about Python code in specifically in aerospace defense, probably manufacturing as well. So Python actually is a popular language in like the scientific community and such. So it's definitely, all I can say right now is it's definitely been asked about by many people, and I've looked into it a bit. That's my answer.
because of AI,
What?
probably because of AI. Because
They use it for other stuff. It does get used for AI, but I think it's more. It for some reason it gets used a lot in science. Nerds. They're not cool like we programmers. So I'll give you trash can useful. I'll give you a definite maybe.
maybe.
So are your minds blown?
Yeah, it's kind of makes me happy because it's stuff I've been like setting up for. So that's really great.
Does all this stuff like does this make sense to you guys? Does this like
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, this right here, that pretty much tells you everything you need to know.
yeah, I think this is great. Really excited. So you're gonna look at the templates and then you gotta start the 9.7, the 9.7
All that.
yeah. Yeah.
I already started.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. Very, very cool.
So yeah, I just really wanted you guys to understand all of this because hopefully this makes more sense. And
Uh,
I think it's very interesting stuff because I mean, just like just having technology itself is not. That's only part of that's important, but it's only part of the equation. And I went and I got like an entire degree, a graduate degree in this subject because I wanted to learn. I didn't want to just be a programmer. I wanted to learn how this stuff actually works. So it's very cool to like be able to apply that theory, and come up with a plan, put it into place. I came up with this plan before I invented the technology, actually.
Well, I
And
remember back in the day, you said like, "Oh, the future is VR." Even if VR ends up being like a absolute disaster, we still get the benefits because it has to be very fast.
yeah, so I see this all as like one really big, complicated chess game. Like, yeah, business is like a game. It's like a video game. It's like a simulation game, and
Life is a simulation.
well, it's a fun game to play. At least when you're winning, it's fun. But if there was no risk involved, if success was guaranteed, then it wouldn't be very interesting, would it?
No, it'll be like the episode of Twilight Zone where the criminal
He was
he
like a
died.
gambler or something.
Yeah, and then it's like it's like he thought he went to heaven, and then he wins every game, and then he has all the beautiful women he ever wanted and everything, and it turns out he's actually in hell.
Well, it doesn't sound so bad to me.
Well, in all
Yeah,
eternity,
I understand. It's yeah, I've actually seen that episode. I like Twilight Zone.
I have a lot of complete box set, no rips and everything. So,
You, sir, are the bigger Twilight Zone fan than me. I just like it.
well, I just like it too, but there was a lot of like things. I'm like, oh, they Paramount might actually like pull these or whatever because they actually like touch on like very like things that are very against modern day. So
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I need to archive have these. So, but yeah. So it's just the VR stuff. It's the template stuff. It's the 0.9.7 stuff, and then it's the VR stuff you gotta look into, I guess,
All
because
right. So I'm gonna take us out with an outro.
I
You are traveling in a dimension not of sight, but of space and time, of 3D graphics. You are entering the Ultra Zone. All right. Any other questions before we go?
nope. I will send you what I want to send you. So,
Thank you. I was waiting for that. Thank you very much.
mm,
All right. Thanks for the discussion. Very interesting, as always. And
yeah.
I will see you guys on the forums.